The first question is, do you think that we're facing something of an existential crisis to the very system that we actually thought had triumphed only 20 years ago, the system of Western democracy and liberal capitalism? Mr. President.
I think there's a fair bit of uncertainty in many parts of Europe about how willing we are to defend our liberal democratic values and how much we're willing to give up in order to get cheap energy.
What is the crisis, basically? It's a crisis of confidence. It was good Latin to say you do not put your savings onto the mattress. No, you put them in very, very safe stocks.
Banks,
like banking stocks. Yes. And now suddenly people are experiencing that had they put the money under their mattresses, they would not have lost up to 4/5 of their savings. And that's a very, very hard lesson.
We don't know the depth of the crisis. We know somewhat of the nature of the crisis, but we don't know the depth. We don't know the duration.
And I think what Obama, and watching the reception he first got in Berlin, and then having lived in Europe during the election, what you saw and what's on the table is, does the West have the capacity, does the United States have the capacity, and the West have the capacity to make a comeback?
I have been to many conferences in my life. This is one of the best ever. Because, of course, this is a time of very important considerations. And then they manage here to create an atmosphere, a climate of free exchange of minds where competent people are sitting there, not reading out long, boring speeches, but really having exchanges of minds.
My point about Afghanistan is the following. Afghanistan should not be considered as the test for NATO. Test for NATO is to defend the territorial integrity of the member states.
NATO-Russia Council is actually a separate organization from NATO itself. So Rogozin doesn't need an accreditation from the alliance. We cannot discuss whether we would accept Rogozin or any other Russian rep. So basically Medvedev can send anyone, which he has done.
There are so many intelligent people with good provocative thoughts. And here I don't need constantly to argue with my intellectual or ideological enemies and prove them that democracy is a good thing for Russia, etc. Russia has failed pathetically during the last 20 years in its liberal democratic transformation. But Russian political elite has succeeded in an amazing way to build an imitation democracy that is accepted by the way.
Russian behavior, foreign policy behavior, I would call pragmatic re-imperialization. A policy of 2 steps forward, 1 step back, which was, I think, very clear in the case of Georgia.
In Moscow, I would dare say that there are a number of people in the leadership, in the various government ministries, who wake up thinking about the United States. And many of them thinking about how they can, if you pardon the expression, screw us. In Washington, most people who wake up don't think about Russia. And I think that fact alone annoys the hell out of the Russians. Russia, I think, is waiting to see how far the West, maybe the United States, is willing to go. How far are we willing to bend? How much are we willing to give up front in an effort to try to improve this relationship? And I think that poses a test for us to see how firm we will stay by our principles and by our values.
Thomas Ilves, Mr. President, you had your hand up. Did you want to ask a question? Or were you just telling me to shut up?
This conference, I'm pleased to say, and very proud, that is one of the most intellectually stimulating of the year. Here in Europe especially, where actually conferences have not become as dynamic as we would like them to be.
Karl just mentioned that EU need to make more for Eastern Partnership. How about to do less and not to invite Lukashenko?
Hands up. Who would shake hands with Lukashenko? Are the people in the room now? I'm looking. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Okay. And who would definitely not?
Is that your hand up, Carl, or are you just scratching your forehead?
No, it's not my hand.
When you have a country with serious human rights questions, you can either choose to cut them off, isolate them, not talk to them, not shake the hand, or you can choose to talk to them. The European Union has always believed that it's better to talk than not talk, because if you're talking, you have at least a channel, a potential channel for influencing.
What language Lukashenko understands? Does he understand selective engagement, or does he understand a firm, strong hand?
Not all of the issues are painful. Some of them are difficult, but by addressing them and analyzing them, you can devise the policies for dealing with them.
You have to try and persuade people to think the way that you do, and then once you persuade them to think what you think, then you persuade them to do what you're doing.
Do we have a fully fledged EU external energy policy? No, we don't have one yet.
You may remember a couple of years ago, Alexei Miller, the chairman of Gazprom in Moscow, had all the EU ambassadors around the table. He looked at them and he said, you know, if you don't want to take our gas, there's no problem. We'll send it to China instead. Beware. Now, the problem with this is that how are you going to get the gas to China?
Well, we feel that the security problems of countries from the Baltic Sea area deserve to be discussed as a complex, because that's the effect that seas have on peoples. They connect peoples, and they make their problems also connected, interlinked, and hence the need to discuss them.
To conclude, I think very much that Lennart Meri, but not only Lennart Meri, because I would include his government, his colleagues, the Estonian people, he was himself an expression of smart security. But Lennart Meri himself regarded security in black and white, either be in or be out.
I often think back to his role and wonder and suspect that maybe Estonia wouldn't be in NATO and the EU today if it wasn't for Lennart. So we're here to think big in the spirit of Lennart and hopefully come up with some new answers.